My dad dropped the sentence the way you'd mention rain in the forecast. Flat, ordinary, impossible to take back. We're going to need your room in the back again. Your brother's turning it into a streaming studio. He said it over roast chicken and overcooked carrots. No preface, no apology, just a line item on the evening's agenda. Lucas is really starting to build something, he added. He's up to 63 followers now. 63. That was the number that erased 3 years of my contracts, my late-night deployments, my caffeine-fueled debugging sessions while the rest of the house slept. 63 strangers on the internet outweighed my entire livelihood. I swallowed, nodded, even managed a smile. Okay, I said, I'll clear it out tomorrow. What I didn't say was that something finished right there at that dinner table, and something else, quietly, almost politely, began. I'm 28. My name is Maya. I fix things. Not just computers, systems, situations, people. If the Wi-Fi hiccups, I'm already at the router. If the printer makes that grinding sound, I'm under the desk with a flashlight. When the car squeaks in a way no one can explain, I'm the one watching repair videos at midnight with grease under my fingernails the next morning. I'm the calm one, the contingency plan, the daughter my parents brag about to their friends just before turning to me and saying, "Hey, can you just..." The office they were reclaiming wasn't actually an office. It was the converted storage room off the carport. Thin door, no lock, concrete floor that never got warm. I had dragged in a second-hand desk and a decent chair I'd saved for months to buy. A folding table held my second monitor and a tangle of cables I understood better than I understood half my relatives. That room was the only square footage in the entire house where I existed without being on call. Every invoice went out from that desk, every emergency patch, every 11 p.m. client call whispered through a cheap headset. That little room covered the electric bill for the TV they used to binge shows Lucas recommended. It padded the grocery budget. It paid the insurance on the car I'd repaired myself when my dad swore we needed a new one. None of that made it to the dinner table. Lucas didn't even look up when Dad made his announcement. He grinned into his soda, already rearranging my life in his head. I could practically see the ring light reflecting in his pupils, his bargain bin gaming chair planted where my filing cabinet stood. Mom nodded along, pushing green beans around her plate. "He's finally got some traction," she said, like that closed the case. Traction. 63 followers and a vision board. I remember the fork frozen halfway to my mouth, the silence stretching out. Even the hum of the fridge seemed louder, like the house was waiting for my reaction. I waited too, for the flash of anger, the hot rush of humiliation I'd always braced for. It never came. Instead, there was a quiet collapse inside my chest, like a shelf overloaded for years, finally giving way with a gentle, inevitable sigh. "Okay," I repeated, "I'll clear it tomorrow." You could feel the table exhale. That's what being dependable buys you. People relax, confident you'll swallow whatever they hand you without making a mess. Lucas finally glanced up. "Thanks, May," he said, already half lost in his notifications. "This is going to be insane." Dad smiled at me, not grateful, just relieved, like a minor logistical problem had solved itself. They thought I'd argue. They thought I'd complain. They thought that was the story. They were wrong. That night, after washing dishes on autopilot, I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark. No music, no TV, just the thin wall between my room and Lucas's laughter pouring through his headset. My phone lit up, a client asking if I could take on extra work next month. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Instead, I opened the browser and stared at the glowing search bar. For the first time, I typed something I'd always dismissed as being for other people: military recruitment near me. I didn't grow up dreaming of uniforms and dog tags. I'm not the kid who saluted planes or played war games. Heroics were never the point. What caught me was something simpler, almost embarrassingly practical: structure, expectations, a place where responsibility was defined, not assumed, where effort had weight, and boundaries weren't treated like personal insults. The website asked for the usual: name, age, education, skills. Then the last question: why are you interested in serving? My fingers hesitated. I didn't write about patriotism or Thudshire. I typed, I want to be somewhere responsibility is shared, not dumped. I hit submit before the old version of me could negotiate herself out of it. The pattern hadn't appeared out of nowhere that night. It had receipts. Small, forgettable moments that, stacked together, became impossible to ignore. When I was 15, I saved an entire school year for my first laptop: babysitting, sketchy weekend gigs, skipping takeout with friends. That Christmas, Lucas got a new phone because, as Mom said, kids need those these days. In college, I worked late shifts at the campus IT desk and stocked shelves at a grocery store to cover books and rent. Lucas dropped out of community college twice. My parents blamed the professors, the schedule, the toxic culture. Never his decisions. Last year, when the furnace died during a cold snap, I fronted the repair: $1,850 charged to my card without thinking. Dad called me a lifesaver and promised to pay me back as soon as things loosened up. They never did. When Mom's car died on the freeway shoulder, I left work early, towed it home with a rented dolly, and spent 2 nights in the driveway with a flashlight and a socket set. She pressed leftovers into my hands like that squared us. I told myself I was helping, that this is what eldest daughters do, that this is just how family works. Sitting in the dark with Lucas's laughter bouncing through the wall, a much colder thought settled in. I wasn't being overlooked. I was being harvested. Kindly, affectionately, but harvested all the same. The next morning, I woke before sunrise and started dismantling my office. I didn't slam things or make a scene. I coiled cords carefully, labeled boxes, stacked folders in order. Years of my life reduced to banker's boxes lined up by the door. Lucas wandered in halfway through, barefoot, hair a mess, taking it all in like a landlord touring a vacancy. "You're actually doing it," he said, almost impressed. "Yeah," I answered. "Cool, I'll need that outlet for my mic and the corner for my green screen." I nodded and went back to wrapping my keyboard. By lunch, the room was stripped. My desk leaned against the garage wall like abandoned stage scenery. My monitor lay face down in a box, wrapped in an old blanket. Without my things, the space looked smaller, less like a workspace, more like a temporary setup, because that's how they'd always seen it. Dad stepped into the doorway, clapped his hands once. He said, "Good, this'll work nicely." That afternoon, the recruiter called. His voice was practiced, patient. He asked about my background, my health, why I'd reached out. He listed options, explained training, benefits, commitments. I told him the truth about my skills, my work, what I could handle mechanically and mentally. I didn't mention Lucas, or the room, or the dinner where my career had been downsized to make room for a ring light. That evening, still smelling like dish soap, I told my parents I'd booked an appointment at the recruitment office. Mom blinked like I mispronounced a word. "The military?" she asked. Dad frowned. "Isn't that a little intense?" Lucas laughed outright. "You? For real?" "I'm thinking about it," I said. They traded looks, concerned, slightly amused, but unconvinced. In their minds, this was just another situation I'd handle and then quietly put back on the shelf. What none of them realized was that I'd already opened a door in my head, And the thing about some doors is that once they're open, you can't unknow the hallway behind them. On the surface, my decision didn't look dramatic. It felt logistical, almost boring, like clicking confirm on terms and conditions you'd already read 3 times. The week rolled on. I commuted, I coded, I debugged. My task list didn't care that something tectonic had shifted inside me. But the house noticed, even if it couldn't name what was happening. Lucas's streaming rig devoured the back room. LED strips bled neon under the door. His voice carried down the hall, loud and amplified, talking to 63 usernames as if they were a sold-out arena. At breakfast, Dad started bragging about the channel to anyone who would listen. Mom asked if I could make his audio sound less tinny. "I'll see when I have time," I said. Mom hugged me and said, "We honestly don't know what we'd do without you." It sounded sweet then. Weeks later, it hit differently. "We don't know what we'd do without you" had never been followed by, "So we're going to learn." It was always, "Don't go anywhere." I started hearing it as, "If you stop, everything falls apart, and that's on you." A few days later, the recruiter emailed the details: address, time, what to bring. I printed the list at work. The printer at home had been acting up for months. Reflexively, I pictured myself clearing the jam, cleaning the rollers, realigning the heads. Then I pictured never touching it again. On the drive home, I rehearsed conversations I knew I wasn't going to have. The speech where I explained everything, the calm, reasoned negotiation, the scene where they suddenly understood. I knew better. That night, Mom asked me to pick up a few things on my way back. Snacks Lucas liked, extra coffee, the usual small mountain of unspoken expectations. The fridge was half full. No one was going to starve. "I'll shop tomorrow," I said. She frowned. "We're out of those chips your brother likes." "Then he'll survive one night without them," I answered, and went to my room. Tomorrow came. No fresh snacks appeared. Lucas whined. Dad sighed. They waited for me to correct the glitch in the system. I didn't. 2 days later, the Wi-Fi dropped in the middle of Lucas's stream. He thundered down the hallway, headset still around his neck. "Maya, it just cut out. Fix it." I was at my laptop replying to emails. "The modem's in the hall closet," I said without turning around. "You're not going to reset it?" "Not right now. I'm working." He stared at me like I'd answered in another language. Dad appeared in the doorway. "Can you just help him out? It'll take you a second." "It always takes me more than a second," I said, keeping my voice even. "And I'm on the clock." The silence that followed was thick and strangely fragile. The house had never had to function without its live-in tech support. That week, I started pulling my life out of the house in small, almost invisible moves. I backed up my drives, twice. I put my passport, birth certificate, and contracts in a folder and locked it in my car's trunk. I changed passwords I hadn't touched in years, turned off Remember This Device on every family laptop I'd ever logged into just to help. Nothing about it felt vengeful. It felt like finally putting on my own oxygen mask. Sunday dinner, Dad brought up money like it was casual. "Things are a little tight," he said. "Might need some help covering a few bills until Lucas's channel really takes off." I took a bite, chewed slowly. "I'm restructuring my budget. I won't be able to cover extras for a while." Mom blinked. "Since when?" "Since now." The look they shared wasn't fear, it was irritation, like I'd stopped playing my part in a script no one had ever acknowledged was being performed. The recruitment office was exactly what you'd expect. Fluorescent lights too bright for the hour, posters curling at the corners, chairs that made you sit upright whether you wanted to or not. The sergeant across from me had the relaxed posture of someone who'd had this conversation 1,000 times. "So, Maya, why here? Why now?" "I'm good in chaos, but I'm tired of being the only one holding the line. I want to be somewhere effort is visible and shared." He nodded like he'd heard variations of that more often than people admitted. On my way home, my phone buzzed. a notification from a storage facility confirming my reservation for a small unit 15 minutes away. Climate-controlled, month to month. I didn't flinch. When I pulled into the driveway that afternoon, my old bookshelf was sitting in the garage, half tilted, my notebooks dumped on top, pages bent, corners crushed, years of thoughts and ideas piled like recycling. I found Lucas in the back room, threading cables through a raceway where my whiteboard used to hang. "Why is my shelf in the garage?" I asked. He shrugged. "You weren't using it. I needed space for display shelves." "That was my furniture," I said, slow and careful. "Chill, it's still here. You're being kind of sensitive." Dad appeared in the hallway, pulled in by the tone more than the words. "She's right," he said automatically, then caught himself. "I mean, it's just a shelf, Maya. Don't make this into a thing." I stared at them both. I'm not being sensitive. I'm finally noticing. That night, lying in my dark room, listening to Lucas yell, "Let's go," to a handful of commenters, I booked the storage unit pickup for the next day. I also did something I hadn't let myself do before. I accepted that none of this was going to change because I asked nicely. The next morning, while brushing my teeth, I heard drawers opening, not in the kitchen or bathroom, deeper, heavier drawers, the kind that stick unless you tug them at that weird angle you only learn by using them every day. Dad was standing in the doorway of the old office with a tape measure. Lucas crouched on the floor, mapping where his new desk would go. "What's the measuring for?" I asked, though I already knew. "Figuring out where to put Lucas's workstation." Dad said, bracing, "We sold your desk. The guy's picking it up this afternoon." The words dropped like a dull weight. "You sold my desk?" I repeated. "You weren't using it," Dad said, bracing, "and he needs something solid for his gear. Those setups are serious now." Lucas glanced over. "Relax, we're giving you $100 from it." $100 for the scarred surface where I'd signed my first freelance contract, for the nights I'd fallen asleep with my face on the keyboard. "Keep it," my voice sounded like it belonged to someone older. "Consider it an early investment in whatever you think this is." Dad's shoulders relaxed. "Knew you'd be reasonable." I went back to my room, sat on the edge of my bed, and waited for Hurt to show up. What arrived was confirmation. They didn't see my work as work. They saw it as flexible space, assets to redeploy, labor to reassign. The pickup truck came later. I heard the scrape of wood on concrete, the murmur of small talk, the rumble of the engine driving away with 3 years of my life in the back. I didn't go out to watch it leave. Instead, I opened my banking app and canceled every recurring charge tied to the house that didn't absolutely have to be in my name. Electric? They could handle the auto pay. Internet? I set the final charge date for 2 weeks out. Streaming services, random subscriptions, temporary transfers that were never repaid, canceled, one by one. That week, my no sharpened. On grocery day, I bought milk, bread, eggs, staples. No snacks, no energy drinks, no impulse extras. "That's all?" Mom asked, peering into the bag. "I'm sticking to my list," I said. When the Wi-Fi glitched again mid-week, Lucas bellowed my name. I told him the router login was taped to the door and went for a walk. When the printer refused to cooperate, Dad grumbled and smacked the side of it. I suggested turning it on and off and went back to my book. Every small refusal felt like lifting a finger off a pressure point I'd been pressing for years. The house didn't implode, it sagged. The lawn went scruffy, the sink lingered half full. Messages from utility companies started arriving with subject lines like "action required." No one connected those changes to me. How could they? I was physically still there, my car was in the driveway, my dirty coffee mug sometimes sat in the sink with theirs. But the invisible engine that kept their lives running had shifted gears. My days started to look different too. I downloaded a training prep plan and 3 mornings a week dragged myself out of bed before anyone else was awake and ran around the block. The sky was still dark, the air held that lonely pre-dawn chill. No one shouted my name, no one needed an emergency password reset at 5:20 a.m. My legs burned, my lungs screamed. The pain, for once, belonged entirely to me. One evening, I sat cross-legged on my bed with my laptop and a notebook and did something I should have done years ago. I totaled it all. Rent, my car payment, food, phone, insurance. Then I added what I'd spent on the house. The furnace repair, internet bills, emergency grocery runs. That time I covered the overdraft fee without telling anyone. Seeing the numbers in black ink made my hands shake. It wasn't just generosity, it was unpaid labor and unacknowledged income support. 3 days after I canceled the internet autopay, Mom held her phone out to me like an accusation. "Why is the provider threatening to cut us off?" she asked. "Because I switched it out of my name. The last payment is on Friday." "But Lucas needs it," she said, genuinely bewildered. "Then someone besides me can put it in their name," I replied. That night, Dad leaned against my bedroom doorframe, arms folded. "You're different lately," he said. "I'm recalibrating," I said. "There's a difference. We're family, we help each other." "Yes, I agree, we do, but we don't drain one person just because it's convenient." He opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time, I watched him consider that I might leave, and not just emotionally. The morning of my medical screening, the house was unusually quiet. Lucas slept in, Mom rinsed dishes slowly, Dad pretended to read the paper. No one asked where I was going, no one offered a ride. I loaded a small duffel, documents, clothes, toiletries, into my car. On my way out, I noticed the porch light still flickering and a strip of peeling paint near the doorframe. I'd fixed both of those things before. Today, I didn't. As I turned the corner, my phone buzzed, a message from the recruiter. "See you soon. This is where it starts." For once, I didn't look back at the house in the rearview mirror. The processing center was loud in a supervised way. Orders barked once, repeated by habit. Lines formed, paperwork shuffled, names turned into numbers and last 4 digits. No one cared that I was the girl who'd saved her family's furnace. No one needed me to fix their router. They cared if I could follow instructions, if my heart rate hit the right numbers, if my paperwork was in order. It was disorienting and weirdly peaceful. That first night, exhausted on a bunk with a thin mattress and a scratchy blanket, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Mom and a text from Dad. "The water heater is dead. No hot water. Call when you can." The old reflex surged. Open a manual, search a model number, mentally map the burner assembly. I put the phone face down and closed my eyes. If I ran home every time something broke, nothing in my life would ever change. 2 nights later, long after lights out, my phone buzzed under my pillow. Once, pause, twice. Dad's pattern. I slipped out of bed and into the hallway, back pressed against the cool cinder block. "Hey," I whispered. "We need you," he said. No greeting, no asking how I was. "What's happening?" "The water heater's shot. No hot water since yesterday. Your mother's boiling pots on the stove just to wash dishes. It's making this beeping noise and flashing some code. We can't afford a service call right now." I could see it in my mind, the narrow laundry room, the metal casing, the little LED display. "What's the error code?" I asked. He huffed. "Hold on." Footsteps, a door, the muffled beep. Then, "It says F07. I opened the manufacturer's manual on my phone, navigated straight to the error section. "That's the ignition system," I said, finally. "The part runs around $90 to $100. Labor will be expensive if you call someone." "Can you just come look at it?" he asked. "You always figure this stuff out faster." "I can fix it, but if I come, there are conditions." Silence. "Conditions?" he repeated. "I'll do this repair, one more time. After that, we all sit down, no TV, no phones, and go over money. Real numbers. Who pays what I've actually been covering, and Lucas starts contributing, cash and chores." "He doesn't have an income yet," Dad said immediately. "Then he gets a job," I replied, "within a month, and we put it in writing that my work, my gear, my space, my time are not community property. No more giving away desks, no more you weren't using it." "That's a lot," he said. I've already given a lot. I leaned my head back against the wall and waited. Fine, he said at last. Just, please come, it's freezing. That weekend, I signed out, caught the earliest bus I could, and rode home in a uniform that still felt like a costume. The house seemed smaller when I walked in, cooler even with the oven on. Mom looked tired in a way that went beyond lack of sleep. Lucas sat at the table, hoodie up, his laptop closed for once. I didn't drop my bag or open with a lecture. I said hi, nodded, and went straight to the water heater. The igniter was cracked, just like the manual suggested. It took me 16 minutes to swap the part, reconnect everything, and relight the burner. I waited until the pipes started to warm and steam finally curled from the bathroom tap. When Mom started in with, "Thank you, I don't know what we would," I held up my hand. Kitchen table, now, all of us. We spread out the bills. Mortgage, utilities, car payments, grocery receipts, the internet invoice Lucas had never really looked at, the streaming subscriptions. Then I added my printouts, bank statements highlighting furnace repairs, overdue bills I'd quietly patched, last-minute transfers labeled just until Friday. This, I said, tapping the stack, is the real cost of this house running the way it has. Lucas scoffed. This is extra. This is basic maintenance, I said. You've been living on a version of reality I've been subsidizing. I turned to him. Starting next month, you pay $300 toward the house, rent if you want to call it that. You get a job, any job, warehouse, grocery store, call center, I don't care. 2 shifts a week, minimum, and you own some physical tasks, lawn, trash, basic repairs, with Dad. You learn. That's not fair, he snapped. I'm building something. You don't get how hard streaming is. You're not wrong. Building anything is hard. I built a business from that room you took over, and I still paid my share. He looked at Dad, waiting for the rescue. It didn't come. Dad rubbed a hand over his face. She's right, he said finally. We've leaned on you too hard, May. Things have to change. Lucas stared at him like the rules of gravity had just been rewritten. I'm not cutting off love. I'm cutting off unlimited access. No one had a comeback for that. When I went back to training, my phone got a lot quieter. No more back-to-back texts about forgotten passwords, weird noises in the attic, or expired registrations. A few updates, some photos of the dog, a picture of Lucas in a reflective vest at what looked like a loading dock. The quiet felt like standing in a room after someone turned off a machine you hadn't realized was so loud. The schedule at training settled into my muscles. Wake before dawn, make the bed tight, boots lined up heel perfect, stretch, run, drill, class, chow, repeat. Every correction came with a reason. Every expectation was the same for everyone, no matter who had fixed whose water heater back home. For the first time, I wasn't the wiring behind everyone else's comfort. I was just one person in a long line, carrying my own weight. 10 days in, Mom texted, "Your father says thank you again for the hot water. It hasn't broken once. No follow-up favor, no, while I have you. Just a sentence." I stared at it a second longer than necessary, sent back, "You're welcome," and slipped my phone away. A few days later, Lucas messaged, "Dad says I have to start paying rent." "That's the agreement," I wrote back. "Got an interview, distribution center, night shift. Doesn't exactly fit the influencer lifestyle." "Welcome to real work," I replied. "Hurts at first." No response right away. I imagined him sitting in his half-converted studio, processing the idea that effort didn't automatically entitle you to applause. My first paycheck hit my account halfway through the training cycle. It wasn't life-changing money, but seeing my name next to a deposit that didn't have invisible strings attached felt revolutionary. I paid my phone bill, I topped off my savings, then I bought myself a pair of running shoes that weren't falling apart. No guilt, no mental tally of who else needed something more than I did. Near the end of that phase of training, Dad called again, mid-afternoon. No panic in his voice this time, just caution. "The furnace is making a weird noise," he said. "I'm not asking you to come home, I just wondered if you had any idea what it could be." "What kind of noise?" I asked. He described it carefully, stopping to think, repeating himself like a student trying to remember all the symptoms before giving a doctor incomplete information. "Check the filter first," I said. "If that's fine, it might be the blower motor. There are good step-by-step videos for your model. Look it up. If you get stuck, call me, and I'll talk you through it." "You're not just going to tell me exactly what to do?" he asked. There wasn't accusation in it, just habit. "I can," I said, "but you can also try first. You're capable." There was a pause, then, "Okay," he said slowly, "I'll try." When I hung up, I didn't feel guilty. I felt like I'd handed him back something he should have been holding all along. I went home again about 4 months after I left. By then, the house had stopped feeling like the place I crawled back to when things fell apart. It felt like a destination, somewhere I chose to visit. The lawn was mowed, not perfectly but consistently. The porch light shone steadily, the trash bins were lined up at the curb on schedule. Mom opened the door before I knocked. "You look lighter," she said, searching my face. "I feel different," I answered. She hugged me hard and then, importantly, let go. Dad was in the kitchen slicing bread. He wiped his hands, came over and gave me a brief, awkward hug, more than he used to, less than a movie scene. Then he pulled an envelope from his pocket and slid it across the table. Inside were neatly stacked bills, 5 of them. "It's not everything," he said, "but it's a start. Transfers set up to go out every month now, you won't have to remind me." I met his eyes. He didn't look away. For my father, that was an apology with punctuation. Lucas came down the stairs a few minutes later in a faded polo with the warehouse logo on the chest. His hair was damp, his eyes tired in a way that had nothing to do with gaming marathons. "Hey," he said. "Hey." "How's basic?" he asked. Loud, structured, weirdly calming. He smirked. "My supervisor's older than Dad and can outlift half the guys my age. I thought streaming was work." He shook his head. I was soft. "You're adjusting," I said. "That counts." During dessert, the dishwasher made a strained buzzing sound and stalled. Instinctively, everyone looked at me. I reached for my water instead. Dad caught himself, turned to Lucas. "Can you check that tomorrow? See if there's something stuck in the filter?" Lucas sighed. "Yeah, I'll look it up after my shift." They went back to their plates. No one circled back to my reaction. No one said, "Maya, can you just—" A knot I hadn't realized I was still carrying finally loosened. On my way back to base that night, my phone pinged. A transfer, $300. The note under it read, "For the laptop I borrowed and broke. I was a jerk. I'm sorry. L." It wasn't about the exact amount. It was about someone finally connecting their comfort to my cost. I still visit, I still care about them, but I walk through that door as their daughter, not as their infrastructure. If something breaks while I'm there and I feel like helping, I help. If I'm tired, I don't. If they ask to borrow money, I say, "Let's look at your budget," instead of quietly sending it and hoping they'll remember. Love didn't vanish when I stepped back. It got sharper, more honest, less one-sided. Sometimes the hardest thing you can do isn't staying in a role that's draining you just because everyone's used to it. Sometimes the bravest move is stepping away long enough that other people have to find their own legs. If any of this felt familiar, if you're the fixer, the safety net, the one everyone assumes will handle it, I want you to know something. You don't have to carry everything alone, and you don't have to keep living in a story someone else wrote for you.